Entering the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. 2022, the Masters picks, research, first look, and in-depth breakdown. Masters Week is officially here, which means I got some stuff to give away to all of you. We're going to be doing our walkthrough on fantasynational.com in a little bit. fantasynational.com/Mayo to get yourself 20% off. The Pat Mayo Experience DraftKings Listeners League is now open. Hit the description, get your 3 entries. There's only 5,000 spots, $75,000 of rake-free guaranteed money. This is going to fill very quickly, so go reserve your spot right now. Sub to the newsletter, but the big thing beyond smashing the like button to the video, subbing to Mayo Media Network, and leaving your winner down in the comment section is I got Masters swag to give away. I'm going to be drawing 3 of you out there over the course of the shows this week. And all you have to do is subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast on Apple Podcasts. You leave that 5-star review, make up something nice about this show, leave your Twitter handle or email address, and you'll be able to find in-depth pictures of this in the newsletter, which you can also subscribe to every day during the Masters down in the comment section. But I got a Masters hat for you. There we go. What else do we got? We got some visors if you're a little old lady or you're 1998 Pat Mayo, you can rock a visor. How about a nice black polo? We'll have the sizes and everything. You've seen me wear the sweater. Well, I have a brand new one right up here, all from the Masters store. All you need to do, Apple Podcast, 5-star review. You can find that down in the description. Even if you don't have Apple Podcasts, you go log in and leave that quick review. Take you less than 30 seconds, and boom, you're in that draw. You can get in the same draw for a one-and-done ticket to Masters season. You go to fantasygolfchampionships.com, play in the brand new one-and-done from Masters to the Open Championship, $100 to play, $10K for first prize. We got a lot of great stuff coming for you this week, and today's no exception. Justin Ray from the 21st Group, contributor to theathletic.com, PGAtour.com. He is here to break down Augusta National, which players that we should be looking for here. Did Hideki break everything that we were supposed to look at in terms of trends from last year, Justin?
Yeah, he was kind of an aberration, right? He came into the Masters last year. He hadn't won in, over a year. He hadn't had a top 10 finish all year going into the Masters last year, and he basically, he broke all the trends. Now we know to look for really strong approach players, and that's what Hideki Matsuyama's calling card is. But other than that, the form versus kind of course fit kind of way we could try to balance guys out going into the Masters. Hideki did break the mold a little bit because you look at the players before that. Tiger was on an ascent in 2019 when he won. Sergio Garcia had won Dubai, and people knocked Danny Willett as a Masters winner, but he was 12th in the world, and he had won Dubai earlier that year too. So, in terms of having that kind of ascent we like to see for players we like going into the Masters, Hideki kind of broke the mold last year.
Even someone like Patrick Reed had 2 top 10 finishes in his 2 previous starts, discounting the match play in his full stroke events, coming in 2018, in the year that he won as well. Are there particular players, you mentioned approach play, but that's every week. If you're not going to be near the tops in approach, you're probably not going to win. Like there's complete outliers every single year who gain 12 strokes putting and they can break that mold. Generally speaking, that's not going to happen at Augusta National. And the biggest thing that we usually talk about is recent form versus course history. And generally, I am always on team recent form because course history is not sticky by and large outside of weird aberrations over time. But as a whole, it doesn't really work out that way. However, my numbers suggest that this is the tournament every year where course history matters the most. Why do you think that is?
There's some certain traits about Augusta National. By the way, I do agree. I think that usually week in, week out, course history, unless the course is particularly quirky, like let's say Colonial, which is one of the shortest courses on tour. If it's something that sticks out as a little bit of an aberration, yes, you could probably look at it a little bit more. Augusta National has some really distinct traits. One of them being that missing off the tee is not particularly penalizing at all. The missed fairway penalty year in, year out is the lowest of any PGA Tour venue all season long. So you can have, some of our favorite players throughout the years over the last 20 years in this championship, whether it's Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Jordan Spieth, none of those guys are particularly straight off the tee. They've had immense success at Augusta National. So I think that's one reason why. The other is it's a little less empirical and a little more kind of colloquial, and that's the nuances and kind of mythology behind the greens at Augusta National, right? Got to know where to miss it. Things that are kind of gained over time and experience, where you can know where you can make mistakes, where to leave putts, where to leave approach shots, which pins you can go after, which ones you can't. And I think there's a little bit of that. Look, we operate in numbers and statistics and predictive things week in and week out, and we can't quite quantify that at Augusta National. But I do think your point about course history sticking out a little bit more here maybe speaks to that some.
And it's funny because even going back and looking at the trends, obviously Hideki bucked a bunch of those a year ago. Patrick Reed actually bucked the making the cut the year before trend of the winner because he had missed the cut in 2017, then ended up winning in 2018. He's been kind of on a roll at the Masters ever since, despite not playing his best golf, although he's been playing nowhere nearly as poor as he has at the moment. Even 12 months ago, he wasn't playing this badly. So taking course history with a grain of salt is one thing. I mean, yeah, Bernhard Langer's won twice. Probably don't want to pick Bernhard Langer this week, even in your DraftKings.
Right.
And I'll touch on this a little bit later on, that even when these guys make the cut, whether it be Couples or Langer, even like the T18 that Fred Couples had 5 years ago, I think in terms of DraftKings scoring, I think he ended up like 34th or something like that. So you really have to weight that just getting these guys through the cut line at the Masters doesn't necessarily do you all that much. You want guys who are bombing it, who can make eagles and rack up the birdies on the easy par fives that way. So what's the prototype of the player that we want? I think on paper, Dustin Johnson at his peak is the essential player at Augusta. Long, straight, still great with his irons, has the short game, figured that out over the years, and can putt. We saw that in the November Masters, and he absolutely demolished the field. I would say that Rahm is probably the closest player to that right now, but he hasn't been having the same sort of consistency, especially on the greens, that we would want to see coming in, to be that good in all four facets of the game. Then you have your Spieths of the world. So even someone like Christian Bezuidenhout, who's sort of like the homeless man Spieth, can kind of get things done on and around the greens. Like, what would you say, besides approach, what type of player would you think you would want to back?
Well, I will say about Spieth, no player has had more strokes gained approach at the Masters since 2015 than Jordan has. I know that when we watch him, we're enamored with his ability to get up and down from everywhere. You call it the magic bean stroke game. I love that term. But in reality, his approach play has been better than anybody since we have the advanced tracking available since the start of 2015. To your point, you're able to, we talk about approach play being significant, right? Like 5 of the last 7 winners, 5 of them ranked in the top 5 that week in strokes gained approach. But in reality, it's not that different than week to week on the PGA Tour, as you mentioned earlier. The percentage of strokes gained by winners at the Masters since 2015, about 36% is with approach play. The PGA Tour average is only about 0.5% lower than that. Patrick Reed in 2018 is a great example of a guy who gained strokes in different ways that weren't particularly the traditional, just off the tee and approach. He was unbelievable on and around the greens and was able to make up the difference in his approach play and off the tee. So you mentioned Dustin Johnson at kind of peak form being the prototype. That's kind of the prototype everywhere, right? And Jon Rahm kind of fits that mold now. No player has a better score to par over the last 4 years at the Masters than Rahm does. 4 consecutive top 10 finishes, the only player to lay that claim here over the last 4 years at the Masters. I lean that direction. I know he's had some putting issues over the last several weeks. I think that maybe that's something that's going to fluctuate week to week. And you and your viewers know that you're savvy enough to know that strokes gained putting is a little bit more fluctuating than ball striking. I really don't see a situation where he's not contending next week. I'm really interested in Corey Connors. Corey Connors has some really great metrics ball striking wise at the Masters the last several years. He's second in strokes gained ball striking per round at the Masters the last 4 years, trailing only Dustin Johnson. I don't necessarily like him to win the championship, but I think you can get some value on him as a DraftKings player, kind of filling out your roster and get you some points and make some birdies. Another guy who we haven't talked about a lot, hasn't gotten the winner's circle in a long time on the PGA Tour, is the Olympic gold medalist Xander Schauffele. 64 birdies or better the last 3 years at the Masters. That's more than any other player. He's a guy who doesn't have any particular weakness. He nearly won the Masters last year, almost chased Hideki down before he kind of fell apart the last couple of holes. So a lot of interesting names on the board, a lot of different ways you can get it done, but those are some of the guys that I'm highlighting.
Rahm, and when I get to it a little bit later on in the actual research, Xander was the name that kind of popped up, that he's becoming this forgotten man. And even if you look at what he's done recently, the ball striking has still been fine. He's just been losing a ton of strokes. And not even a ton of strokes, but he's just not putting up to snuff of what you would think. And he seems to be able to roll it, especially on fast greens and fast bent grass greens really, really well over the course of his career. And you can always search this stuff on Fantasy National. Not for the Masters, because they like to hold those numbers a little bit close to the vest, don't they, Dustin? Or just Justin?
Yes. Not as free with the information. Traditional or new age.
You mentioned the guys that were ranking inside the top 5 in terms of approach, and it's funny because like week of, you can find this on masters.org. You can find the approach numbers and everything like that. It's just finding them after the fact tends to be pretty difficult. So you can kind of keep it around. I have last year's numbers here from someone independently trying to like scrape the numbers off the site, which is kind of hilarious of how some people have to go and try to find these numbers to try to get an advantage on something like head-to-head betting per round, DraftKings Showdown per round. But who are the players in approach that maybe would surprise us that would be up there who have performed well at Augusta?
Well, so this is a name, he wouldn't necessarily surprise you in terms of being really great with approach play, but I feel like no one is talking about Collin Morikawa, and he's 2 for 8 in his major championship career. Nobody's done that since Bobby Jones. So, and if you want to talk about great approach players, nobody has a higher strokes gained approach per round average since turning pro than Morikawa does. If you look at the list of guys who've got the best strokes gained approach numbers at the Masters since 2015, I mentioned Spieth. He's the only guy to gain a stroke or more per round in that span. Another forgotten guy who had 3 top 3 finishes in major championships last year, led after 6 different rounds. Louis Oosthuizen ranked 2nd in that statistic since 2015. And then Connors is 3rd, Hideki Matsuyama 4th. Another guy's had a lot of success at the Masters in terms of contending, having good finishes, making a lot of birdies. Paul Casey ranks 5th on that list. And then Webb Simpson, who really isn't the same player right now as he was the previous few years. So I think Casey's a little bit surprising to see on that list. I think some players, if you're a savvy daily fantasy person or a particular NBC analyst, you may not realize that Corey Connors is a really good approach player. So that might surprise you. But no, those are the guys who lead at Augusta National in strokes gained approach since we've got these numbers since about 2015.
Well, it's okay for Corey Connors because if that ball striking comes back to earth a little bit, he's the best putter on the planet. So, he can always make
That's
up for it that way, right? Yeah. Talk to his caddy. He's the best.
That's what I hear. I can't find those numbers anywhere, but conversationally, I hear that all the time.
Yeah, just it keeps put it out into the ether long enough. It's like tell yourself this, your mantra every single day. I'm the best putter. I'm the best putter. Then other people will start saying it, and maybe if you believe it, it can happen. I just great. What if Connors just all of a sudden has a good just the pendulum flips on him and he has that one outlier week where he does putt well? Could he win?
Absolutely. His ball striking numbers are absolutely good enough to put him in a position to be a major champion. I tend to like him a little bit more at the U.S. Open than at the Masters, but I could definitely see on a golf course where we talked about the significance of approach play. It's significant everywhere. But that's his calling card, right? He's an excellent ball striker. If he basically is neutral or a little bit positive in putting, he should be a contender.
The last thing that I want to wrap about you with here are the injuries that we're seeing coming into play right now. We got a bunch of injured golfers. Like, obviously, Phil's not playing. He's not really injured, though. His ego is injured at the moment. His reputation is injured. Yeah. But Harris English is probably not going to play. So, obviously, we have Tiger. No word yet when we're recording this, whether he's playing or not. Webb hasn't looked like Webb since he returned. Who knows what's going on with Hideki? He's playing Valero. No idea how that outcome is going. Bryson is still dealing with some sort of injury, but at least he's back and playing at the moment. Then all of a sudden, Abraham Answer says he's injured before the Valero Texas Open the night before, withdraws from the event. All these guys are in the field for the Masters. What do you do with them? Does it create good value if they're not injured, or are they just complete fades because the other guys aren't injured and these guys could be?
A couple of those names are fades for me in the first place, whether they were healthy or not. Bryson, his ball striking numbers at the Masters aren't bad. He's in the top 5 in strokes gained off the tee, top 10 in strokes gained ball striking since he made his debut. But he's the 3rd worst putter of anybody qualified since 2016 in terms of strokes gained at the Masters. I think, it was kind of the predecessor, right? You can't use the yardage books at Augusta National. They don't exist. And now you can't use them on the greens on the PGA Tour. So it was a little bit of a glimpse of what we've seen, some of his putting struggles. I would have faded him whether he was healthy or not at the Masters. I like him at some of the other places, obviously the U.S. Open, where he was so dominant in winged foot a couple years ago. If he got a similar type setup there, I could see him again. But I don't like him at the Masters anyway. Matsuyama is it's really a tough story because he was such a feel-good, great winner last year, and it was just such a, the beautiful moment with his caddy bowing to the course, which was surreal and really cool. And he's a guy who's easy to root for, right? And we just don't know about his back injury. It doesn't look promising, especially with the form he had earlier in the season, winning Zozo and then winning in Hawaii. He would have been somebody who, we definitely would have had our eye on as maybe the fourth guy to go back-to-back. But I would fade him now in terms of what we've seen the last couple of months. I kind of think about, Brooks Koepka going into the Masters last year, right? When he had that crazy Spider-Man crouching putting thing because he couldn't really bend his knee. And, for me, he was a fade then, even given how successful he's been in the major championships over the last few years. I think there's just enough big, solid, valuable names for you to pick from who are healthy that I think you can kind of fade a lot of those guys who are kind of questionable on the health front.
Can you inform us some of those other names at the bottom of the Masters putting list? Because I would like to know that, because it's weird to hear Bryson, because Bryson typically is one of the best putters on the PGA Tour by the numbers.
Yeah, the other two names that are actually behind him were Sandy Lyle and Jose Maria Olazabal. So past champions in a ceremonial setting. I think Brandon Grace has putted particularly poorly in his last couple of Masters appearances. But in terms of guys who are, top of the board, top of the world rankings, real contenders going into major championships, nobody's been worse than Bryson putting on Augusta's green since 2016.
Well, fade Jose Maria Olazabal. All right, I'm going to write that one down. That's a good one. So it's probably best to end with a name that you just kind of mentioned, Brooks Koepka, whose ball striking has returned. All of a sudden at the Valspar, he's over 6 in terms of ball striking between driving and approach. It was very similar at the Honda Classic. It was very similar at with the Waste Management. Not so much at the Players, but he got that bad wave, and he was not very good at the Genesis overall, very good at the match play. Is he doing enough right now that he's just trying to peak at the right time? And when you go back and look at his Masters history, throw out last year when the dude legit couldn't bend over to take the ball out of the hole, had never missed a cut at the Masters before, had a second place finish, a string of really good performances. Or should we just blindly tail this? Well, his odds are double what they probably should be.
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of throwing out last year's results. I think we have enough of a track record over the last 6 years of Brooks Koepka in major championships to be really bullish on him going into Augusta National. My favorite stat that keeps just refreshing and getting more ridiculous. He's 92 under par in the majors since 2016. Second place is DJ at 28 under. Like, just the level he has separated himself in terms of peaking for the major championships, performing on these big events, loving really difficult golf courses. He's gained more than 2.6 strokes per round against the field in majors since 2016. Only 2 other players are even at 2 strokes per round. That's a huge difference. I'm with you in terms of throw out last year, the way he had played at the Masters the previous couple of times he'd gone out there. I think he was tied for second when Tiger won in 2019. I'm really bullish on Brooks Koepka, but based on the way he's played the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, and of course what he's done in the majors over the last few years.
Can I interest you in any 66-1 on Adam Scott, a wager I have already made?
That's very interesting, especially the way that he had been playing. He looked like a buzzsaw in the match play for a few days. He's got some great, obviously, what he's done on the golf course in the past. 66-1 is a nice number. I hadn't really thought too much about it, but yeah, I'd definitely get in on that.
It's the reinvention of his putting, something I'll dig in deeper when we start going through his player card a little bit later on. But I don't understand how someone could have been so bad on the greens for years. Then all of a sudden he's like a top 15 guy in the world over the past 18 months. Can you make that make sense for me?
I cannot. Look, these guys are incredibly talented and can make changes. They'll find something to flip the switch and become a lead in a certain skill set. But in terms of, a guy who really struggled, especially in key moments with his putter for so many years, it's kind of been refreshing to see kind of a rebirth in that facet of his game.
Well, I'm looking forward to being on the 72nd hole and watching him 3-putt from 5 feet in order to lose me that ticket. And it all just comes back all at the wrong time. Actually, let's end with this. Weather. Obviously, Augusta is one of the, all courses that can play differently with detrimental weather or very good conditions. But would you completely reinvent your approach to what happens on Wednesday if you knew that it was going to be 25 mile per hour winds, it was going to be a little bit colder, versus having that idyllic, prototypical Augusta that we're waiting for? Because the last time we really got it bad, we've seen like rounds where it was bad, but 2016, the year that Willett won, 2009, the year that Zach Johnson won, -5, +1, like that can happen at Augusta National. It's not likely to happen, but would you just do a full stop, hey, like these are the guys I'm now taking?
That's an interesting question. I think that the weather, obviously, at Augusta National can play a significant factor for some guys. I might, if I looked at my roster and saw a couple of players who are really high apex players who fly the ball really high, like let's say Justin Thomas hits a really high ball, maybe that would deter me a little bit. But you kind of look at the guys who had success in 2016. Jordan Spieth should have won. Lee Westwood was up there towards the top. Danny Willett was one of the best ball strikers in the world at that point. So I don't think I would completely throw it out the window. But if you're looking at Wednesday night and you see some crazy weather, maybe take a look at the PGA Tour leaderboard in terms of apex height, in terms of their tee shots. And that might be something you consider. If you've got somebody really high on that list, the wind may be impacting them a little bit more than some of the guys who are lower ball flight players.
Yeah, I think it would take away, like, I don't really have much interest in someone like Kevin Kisner this week in really good conditions, but if I knew it was going to be wet, cold, and really windy, it's like, all right, then I can make a case for Kevin Kisner, I think, dude, as being that Zach Johnson mold type player where if the winning score is going to be -16, like, I have no interest in Kisner.
Right, yeah, the more variables that are in play, the better for a player like Kisner.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Justin Ray, what do you got going on this week for, probably the biggest week of the year for all of us who cover golf? Where can we find you, and what's the most important bit of information we should be getting from you now?
I'll be writing for The Athletic all week. You can find our work after every round, as well as a big pre-tournament preview that's going to go up on Wednesday at theathletic.com. I also write every week for the PGA Tour. You can find that article every Tuesday at PGAtour.com. No exception next week. It'll be up Talking Masters on that website as well. Biggest piece of information for me going into it. If you're at Augusta National, I would say pimento cheese, a little overrated. Number one item on the board for me is the peach ice cream sandwich. So I'm going non-analytical with my information to know. If you're at Augusta National, my number one item there, peach ice cream sandwich.
All right, Justin Ray, follow him on Twitter, of course, as most of you do already, and check out all of his work, like he's mentioned, PGAtour.com, theathletic.com, and all of his work with the 21st group as well. So thank you, Justin, for being on the line. Let's jump over, do our research, look at the numbers over at fantasynational.com right now. And once again, if you want full access to all of the tools, get yourself the discount, use the code Mayo. So go to fantasynational.com/Mayo in order to get that 20% off. And it has everything. It has your lineup generator, your ownership projections for all DFS, the simulator where it gets run 1,000 times or maybe even 10,000 times for the Masters. It's usually just 1,000 times, so you can see how everything is going to turn out if a computer played this the entire time. And sometimes the computer makes better picks than you. I don't really want to go too in-depth into the course because if you've made the leap to search out this show and are listening, then you're probably pretty familiar with how Augusta National plays. It's a par 72. It's just longer than 7,435 yards, but it actually plays a little bit longer than that solely because of the vast elevation changes. And I'm recording this before the conclusion of the Valero Texas Open, so as it pertains to the field, we still don't have a confirmation as of now whether or not Tiger is going to play, and if someone who wins Valero that wasn't previously into the field, they'll get added. So that will all get updated on the site as we go through, but it's something to keep in mind when we're digging through some of the players, and you have to remember that there's no penal rough on the grounds anywhere. So it does give a lean to players who have a little bit of extra distance on the field, just because it allows you to attack the par 5s and even the longer par 4s, makes them far more manageable. You can see what the scorecard at Augusta looks like throughout the years. Hole number 1, if you're Victor Hovland, you're going to make a triple bogey. You can rally back. It's going to be very tough. And we've seen number 1 play really difficult early in the morning over the years. It's funny with Augusta because you can never really predict what the final score is going to be. Guys can get to minus 18. They can win it plus 1. It really depends on the weather coming in from that week. I personally think that we're still too far out right now in order to really make an assessment of how the weather is going to impact anything. However, that's something that we're going to pay attention to on the Wednesday live show and even in the newsletters throughout the course of the week. I'll have the updated weather in there. You can sub to that down in the description right now if you want to. When we think about eagle rates at these courses, you can see that number 13, number 15, you can get yourself an eagle stew going here. Unless you have Jason Duffner to make the cut and he puts it into the water twice on number 15, trying to go for it, it usually turns out pretty well. You can see a 2.8 eagle rate on number 15 on the shorter par 13 or on number 13, over a 3% eagle rate. Birdie percentage is over 30% on each of the par 5s, and even number 16 is actually third on that. And a lot of that has to do with the Sunday location where hole-in-ones get made more often, if that's where they choose to do it, at the bottom of the hill on number 16. It fosters a lot of pretty short birdie opportunities, although that putt can be a bit tricky depending on which side of the hole that you're on. If you're on the bottom right side of the hole, even 20 feet away, sometimes it's a little bit better than being to the left slightly above the hole where you still have to come down that hill. We see a lot of short putts missed on that hole on Sunday. We've been watching this tournament forever. It's one of the fun things about Augusta National is how well we all know the course and where the little tricks may lie. We also see, number 3, the par 4. That's the one that, technically you could potentially drive it. It's 350 yards. Most people lay to the bottom of the huge false front at the bottom of that hill, then try to put it up. That one really depends on pin location as well in terms of birdie rate. That's almost up near 20%. So those are going to be your scoring holes. And then you have a few that are just absolutely deadly, like 7% birdie rate on number 1, 7% on number 4, 7% on number 5. You can manage your way around the front 9, get the birdies where you need to on number 2, on number 8. Maybe you can sneak one on number 3 and just don't give them away anywhere. Because you don't see, as we see right here, like the highest double or worse percentage on any hole is number 11, which makes a lot of sense when you see how that hole is laid out. It's only 5%, so you're not seeing a lot of huge numbers made at Augusta National, but that's a 31% bogey rate on that hole. Number 10 has a 25% bogey rate. Even when we take a look at number 12, which should theoretically be a super easy hole, that's up around 17.2%. That really short par 3, the one where Spieth dunked it into the water over and over. So the path of least resistance is going to be distance, and that's not to say that Cameron Champ is just going to win. Although, looking at Cameron Champ's numbers at Augusta National, when we dig into him, you're just going to see that, hey, for whatever reason, Cameron Champ's pretty good at Augusta over the course of his career, considering he sucks everywhere else. Then, a T19 that was in the fall with the Dustin Johnson Masters, and you're like, oh, maybe it was just, because it was in November, the conditions were a little bit weird. Then he followed it up with the T26 last year. So distance just makes some of these holes a lot easier. This isn't to say that you need overwhelming distance in order to do well. Tiger won, Patrick Reed won, Danny Willett won, although the Willett year just played really difficult. So then that kind of brings your elite scramblers into play. This is going to test all parts of your game, but think about someone like Patrick Reed, who's not especially known for his driving prowess. He was well above his usual driving baseline in 2018. He gained 3.35 strokes with his driver. That's a lot for Patrick Reed, especially if you consider 2021 Patrick Reed at this point, who can't seemingly keep the ball in play whatsoever. And we take a look at his driving stats, and strokes gain metrics for the Masters are proprietary, so you need back channels in order to get your hands on them. We don't currently have them at Fantasy National, and most places are just not going to have them. But if you search around long enough, you can probably find them. So this is what Patrick Reed has been doing lately. He's gained off the tee just once. That was in a miscut at the Honda Classic since last year's Rocket Mortgage Classic, which was in July, against a really weak field at a really easy course. So the driving has just been awful for him. So even to go back and look at when he won, and we have to go back to 2018. We got to keep scrolling here. You can see he had the two nice finishes coming in, more on that in a second, and he had been gaining off the tee coming in. Now that 3.35 was the most he had gained out of all those events, but because you can hit it onto the pine straw is not triggered as detrimental potentially depending on what your lie ends up being and the path that you have to the hole in terms of strokes gained, that he was not as penalized as he normally would for having a complete lack of distance plus accuracy. He was good enough that week. When you take a look at someone like, I don't know, Tiger, the year that he won, he gained 1.5 strokes off the tee, which is not a lot whatsoever, but he did gain over 9 on approach, and that's really the number that mattered. And when you try to back the non-elite drivers, you really need to hope that the irons and putter are good all 4 days. You're not going to have the ability just to skate off with one of those really poor putting performances, really bad iron performances, if you can't lean on your off the tee game. So I think it's important to go look at how this is kind of factored out. We don't see the usual distribution of strokes gained that we normally see from each of the course, and you can just see how they've played on the par fives. You got to take advantage of your par fives. Doing the Zach Johnson where you lay up on every single par five and still win the Masters is not going to be a likely scenario unless it's 41 degrees out and it's raining the entire time and you just have to plod your way along the course. That's unlikely to happen. That's such an outlier, and that happened so long ago. Now, was that 2009? Yeah, so it's been over a decade since we saw that type of finish, even in the year that Willett won, which I would contend has probably been the second most difficult Masters year. That was all just win-related. So if you were hitting your irons really strongly and you had a really good around the green game, that's what was really going to get you where you needed to be. But still being able to find the fairway, get the ball out there a bit to make those second shots easier, was absolutely huge. We see the historic cut line from the course and the tournament, +1 a year ago, +4, +6, +7, +3, +3. The 1 year in November, it was changed. The top 50 in ties only make the cut, but that's because of the lack of daylight they had in November. It was switched back to top 50 in ties and all players within 10 strokes of the lead, as it is in most years. And remember, this is the only tournament that has something like that, because it's the Masters. People think that applies at the Open Championship or the U.S. Open. It doesn't. It only applies at the Masters. So it's top 50 and ties plus anyone within 10 strokes of the lead. You can see driving accuracy much higher at the Masters than it is at your regular tour event. And that, again, facilitates the longer hitters and their ability to go for it. Because A, missing the fairway isn't as penal as it would be at other courses, and the fairways are just really wide. You can just hammer it into a bank, get some huge roll, and just end up in the fairway anyway. So guys are incentivized to go for it. Now, hitting greens in regulation, it's still a 61% clip. It's not crazy, but it is lower than your tour average of around 66%, and scrambling is tough. But a lot of that does have to do with putting, because you can see the average 3-putt at the Masters. Guys are averaging almost 1 3-putt per round, where it's around 0.55 per round amongst the field at your average tour event. So that's going to go hand in hand with scrambling, because part of scrambling is going to be making those 9-footers, those 10-footers. And if you're 3-putting, it's going to be real tough to scramble if you're not hitting all these greens in regulation right off the hop. So that's something to keep in mind. We can take a look at just overall, I did this last year and each of the years, because I mentioned that we're going to need players who are good off the tee. So we can just look past 50 rounds, strokes gained off the tee. Let's see who it is. Rahm, Bryson, Sergio, Connors, Cantlay. Guys, outside of Bryson, really, who have played well at the Masters time over time. Cameron Young is up there. He's $7,000 on DraftKings this week. Triple digits in the betting market. Fitzpatrick is a really interesting one, because we've kind of liked Fitzpatrick at Augusta over the years, but at the same time, it's not going to be someone you would consider a bomber by any means, but he has increased his distance a lot, and where he's hitting so many fairways, it's really elevating. I mean, there was the running joke for ages that Matthew Fitzpatrick, just play him at any tournament that had the word Masters in it, and you would be fine. Now, as a former winner of the Nordia Masters, or probably like the Austrian Masters, and he won the British Masters, I think, at one point in time, maybe this one's on his list, the Masters Tournament. You can see the results results haven't been great for him outside of, again, that Willett Spieth year. He came in 7th, where back when he was a much shorter hitter, he's added about like 10 to 15 yards on his driving over the past year and a half. So I think that's interesting to go look at. We see the best per round over time. We can even take the average and take a look and see if, let's see, we can just get the actual raw numbers here. Rahm and Bryson averaging a stroke per round off the tee, which is pretty incredible. So I would say almost anyone that's kind of above that threshold. You don't want to start digging down into guys that are pretty bad. Now, Cameron Smith is a weird outlier in this circumstance because we know how well he's played at Augusta and how much better he's been. But even at the Players' Championship, guy lost like 5 strokes off the tee. He just did everything else well in order to end up winning. Guy made a zillion putts throughout the course of the week. He's someone with an immaculate track record at Augusta for someone who's never won, and the driving has really not got the worst of him here. So it's really his accuracy issues, not so much his distance issues. So I think trying to separate those things too is going to be sort of a task that's on your hand. But you don't want someone who's just absolute trash off the tee, I guess is the point that I'm really trying to make when it comes down to it. We can take a quick look at tournament history as well to find the players, maybe even outlier players that have done pretty well over time. You can see Hideki made the cut the year before. Dustin Johnson was 2nd the year before, so obviously he made the cut. Tiger Woods made the cut the year before. Patrick Reed was like the only guy who had missed a cut. Patrick Reed blew up a lot of this. And even in terms of trends, it is kind of odd because Hideki blew up a lot of these spots last year coming in. Because coming into last year, each of the winners had at least 2 top 15 finishes in their 3 tournaments before going into the Masters. I think I would probably lean back more towards that. And if you just hit up the recent history tab at the top, you can kind of see the different types of players who would do well there. Obviously, Scheffler won the match play. The match play is tough to import into systems because there's no strokes gain data or anything like that. So obviously Scheffler fits because he had a first, 55th, and a first. Rahm would be outside of that category. Dustin Johnson would not. He would actually set up pretty well. That would kick Thomas out of that category. It would kick Morikawa out. Poor Morikawa. Hovland would technically be out because he had the nice run, but then it kind of stopped going in. Guys have been far more inconsistent. Shane Lowry would be on that metric right now because he would have had those 2 before the match play. He's been playing really good golf. It's just funny how a lot of these Florida tournaments, in terms of lead-in form over the years, have really predicted, in terms of just recent form, hot play coming in, who would end up doing really well at the Masters. There's just frankly very few people who fit this build this year. Kisner would be one because he ended up coming 2nd at the match play. I guess Homo would just miss it by 2 placement points at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. And obviously the Valero numbers aren't in here either. So that's also something you can kind of go back in time to look at. Fitz didn't get out of his group stage, but he had 2 top 10s and a miscut at the Players coming into this event. Henley would actually qualify for that number. Let's see, Hatton, I guess he would have been 16th. Actually, T9. No, Hatton would qualify because he got out of his group at the match play. Burns would qualify for that. Gooch would not because he didn't get out of his grouping. Richard Bland ended up doing that. Berger would actually qualify for this as well, despite the fact that when you go back and look at his Masters history, it has not been a pretty scene for old Daniel Hauser Berger in the course of his career. I think he was low debutant in that Willett year in 2016. He's just been mediocre overall. You can see he didn't play it in 2019, not in 2020, and he did not get into the field. Did he get into the field last year? Yes, he missed in the November Masters because they had locked everything in March that year, so you couldn't play your way in, but by the time that the Masters came around, Berger was playing much better golf than he had over the previous 18 months because he had won at Colonial in the first event coming out of the COVID hiatus when he beat Xander and Morikawa in that playoff at the Charles Schwab Challenge. So you can see just like he's got decreasingly worse in every start that he's had at Augusta National. I'm not going to hold that really much against him, but it is worth really kind of emphasizing that Augusta National, year over year, is the course that has the most course history baked into it. There is something with knowing to play off that slope with this pin location. Just that baked in knowledge, that local knowledge of Augusta National, where this is such a unique course and so many different undulations, just knowing those green types, it really does mean a ton. You can see just the players who play well constantly play well, and it's not always the ones that you would imagine. Looking at the most strokes gained total over the past 5 years, Rahm, Dustin, Hideki, Spieth, and Justin Rose is still up there. Even last year when Rose was kind of trash, still came 7th. He's only missed one cut over the past 4 years. Thomas continues to play really well, although he only has that one top 10 finish, which is a little bit scary coming in. Rory is kind of all over the map. He has the 3 top 7 finishes at T21, and he actually missed the cut last year, which is shocking to think about. Reed ended up inside the top 10. So even though he wasn't playing, he's playing much poorly now than he was 12 months ago. Either way, he had cobbled up 2 top 10 finishes in the course of 4 months at the Masters. It's worth noting, being a former champion as well. You can see Cam Smith has been excellent at the Masters over the course of his career. Had a lot of money on him when he lost to Dustin Johnson, but no one was beating Dustin Johnson that year. That was just scary times. Yeah, Finau's played really well. He has the 3 top 10s in 4 years. It's really difficult to gauge where his game is at. He had one really good matchup at the match play. We'll see how he does at Valero. Webb Simpson, another one. 4 consecutive top 20 finishes. Brooks, I'm not going to hold what happened to Brooks against him last year. The guy was so hurt he could barely bend down to pick up his putts. He tried to gut it out. Other than that, in his 3 previous appearances, he does have 3 top 11 finishes. He ended up coming second to Tiger the year that Tiger won. Leishman, another good player. Hell, Xander. Xander, I've seen him down as low as 28-1 in some spots. And it's not like he played like horrendous. He lost to Finau in that matchup that I was talking about at the match play. It's not even like Xander played all that poorly. And overall, his game has been like good. He missed the cut at the Players, never really plays all that well at the Players Championship, whatever. 12th at the Valspar. Did it with his ball striking. That's what we want to see. Phoenix did it with the ball striking and chipping. Ended up coming 3rd to Scheffler and Cantlay. So this season, although he has never really been in contention all that often, he was in Phoenix. He very much was in contention that week. But that was really it for him. You can see the ball striking has been really good 3 of the past 4 tournaments. And the Players, you can almost throw out the strokes gained numbers from that event every single year because 2 or 3 wayward shots, and it makes it look even worse than it's going to be. I think he went double water on 17 because he got caught in a windstorm. What are you going to do? Everyone from that wave struggled mightily at the same time. So I think that the perception of Xander has begun to change because for a while there's 2 contingents on Xander overall, where it's some people think that he's the absolute greatest thing, that he's going to win 5 majors at some point. Then you have the polar opposite because, it's 2022 and you need to have only polarizing opinions on everything, where Xander sucks, he's a fraud. He's not either of those things. He's a above average, highly skilled, top 20 player in the world. Could he win the Masters? Yes. Most definitely he can win the Masters. But the perception is kind of shot back. And you notice this in the betting market a lot, where despite the fact that he wasn't winning, hadn't really won it all that long, he'd be 16-1, 18-1. Well, that's not the case anymore. Guys have passed him. Scheffler, obviously, now the number 1 player in the world, he has passed him in the public's perception. Patrick Cantlay has passed him in the public perception. Vic, Morikawa, plus all the regular guys that you would want to see at the very top. All these guys that came in as a part of the Xander generation of players have passed him in terms of notoriety and what we perceive their odds to be to win tournaments. So now it's dropped him back a level. The same thing's happened to Finau over time. For years, he was just wildly overvalued in the betting market. And some may say 28-1 on Xander Schauffele is still overvalued in the betting market, and they're probably right. But once we start getting to the 35s, the 40s, that's not so bad anymore. Hell, Zalatoris might have better odds to win the Masters than Xander Schauffele by the time we actually get to the event. I love Zalatoris this week, by the way. Runner-up last year, putted the lights out at Augusta National, which is not something you would actually think that Zalatoris would do. But here we are. Russell Henley has 2 top 15 finishes, the first time that he's been playing since 2018. And again, he fits those trends. His odds are like ridiculous this week. They're like 35-1 or something crazy like that. Connors has made the cut in every appearance he's made. Louis, he has the runner-up finish, but even in the past 5 years, never really in contention. But at the same time, he's continued to make cuts year over year over year. Xander and Leishman, we talked about. Try to find some guys who really haven't been all that good. You have your debutants in the field right now, or guys who haven't played it in a long time. Technically, Luke List isn't a debutant at Augusta National. But he hasn't played since 2005, I think it was, because of the U.S. Amateur. So, as a pro, it's the first time we're seeing Luke List at Augusta National. So these are guys that haven't played over the course of the past 5 years. You see EVR is on that list, but he withdrew from the November Masters when he had played in it. Sergio hasn't made a cut since he won in 2017. But the overall debutants, you got Gooch, Sam Burns, Seamus Power, Luke List, Cameron Young, Tom Hoagie, Harold Varner III, Seb Straka, Min Lee, Cameron Davis, Lucas Herbert, Katiti Nakajima, Ari Eggs, Garrick Higo, my guy. I'm not getting talked off my guy, Garrick Higo. You want to target lefties here, and he's been playing like crap, but I don't care. I'm going with it. KH Lee. Harrington's obviously not a debutant, but he has not qualified in any of the past 5 years. He and Higgs both got in with their result at the PGA Championship last year at the Ocean Course. Guido is in because of the U.S. Open. Someone named Laird Shepheld. What a name. Austin Greaser. Oh, here we go. I like that. Aaron Jarvis, James Piot. So they're all the amateurs, first-time amateurs that are going to be in the field. Then you see some other players. Bezadenhout has made it twice. South Africans have had such a nice run at this tournament. Will, it's been bad since he won 4 missed cuts in a T25. Really difficult to go with him. Matthew Wolff was DQ'd last year. You don't want anything to do with Matthew Wolff. Kisner was a part of a Millionaire Maker winning lineup at one point in time. And he's going to be pretty popular based on his price point coming in and his performance at the match play, $6,800. They'll talk about how, Kevin Kisner, he's going to know Augusta really well. And he does know it really well. But when we talk about the types of players that do really well, you almost need to have bad circumstances for Kisner to end up at the top of the leaderboard. That's just everything to go along with it. Like, he's missed the cut the last 2 years, T21, T28, T43. He would have to have the best ball striking week of his career combined with immaculate putting in order to get this done. And that's just such a big ask out of someone like Kevin Kisner because he's just not that good off the tee. If it like the next week at the Heritage, he's going to be fine. At Augusta National, it's going to be a bit trickier for him. Hatton has been a mixed bag, but he's playing some better golf recently, and he is one of those people that fits that form narrative I mentioned coming in. But again, no real great finishes here, and I will stress this every single year just because, Fred Couples might make the cut, and he might. Listen, Jose Maria Olazabal made the cut last year. Billy Horschel, Billy Horschel's been bad at Augusta over the course of his career. But all these old guys that are in the field. So you got Couples, Weir, VJ, Sandy Lyle, Larry Mize, Jose Marie Olazabal. We're not getting Woosnam for the first time in 45 years or something crazy like that. However, these guys, even if they make the cut, they don't finish well. You had that one Langer year in 2016 where he was pretty good. He's made the cut 3 of the past 5 years. I mean, he's basically outperformed Zach Johnson over that time. Hell, throw Zach Johnson into the old guy mix at this point. But they're not even necessarily like the lowest priced guys in the field, like 61, because you can save so much money by using one of these guys. And it's like, what if VJ makes the cut? Then my other 5 guys are going to be great. No, you're not winning shit with VJ Singh in your lineup, even if he comes 49th out of 56 players. That's not going to help you win GPPs. It's just not. Just avoid the trap of trying to use these guys. Just do that and you're going to be fine. Maybe when you had the Fred Couples, and granted, this is from 5 years ago with Fred Couples. He came T18th, but even that year was just a lot of pars. He wasn't making birdies out there. We're talking about DraftKings scoring for a lot of this. Obviously, you're not betting these guys to win outright, and you most definitely don't want to bet them top 20 because it would have hit once out of, 30 times looking at it over the past 5 years. You're not getting positive EV on that bet. But when we're talking about birdies and eagles and trying to score DraftKings points, I mean, where did he even come in 2017? You can always just go and look at that, mind you. In terms of DraftKings points, we can go to DraftKings scoring and figure out where he actually came. Let's see here. Where's old Freddie Cups? Fred Couples scored 63 points. 63.5 points. So that's where's that going to be? That is below guys. There's Fred Couple. So he tied with Matthew Fitzpatrick, who came in 32nd. Jason Day finished behind him, scored more points. Phil came behind him, scored more points, scored significantly more points at the same time. Hoffman scored more points by coming T22. So Martin Keimer was 16th and scored 15 more points. That's separated by 2 spots on the leaderboard. Some of that had to do with Keimer ended up making a bunch of eagles at the same time. But that stuff, those bonus points are just out of play for Fred Couples versus a lot of the other players around him. So realistically, he came T18th, which you would think is a very good finish, but his DraftKings points ended up in the same range as guys who came 33rd or 28th or 43rd like Bernd Wiesberger, or 22nd like Justin Thomas. Like, he massively underperformed his DraftKings scoring to his actual placement points, and that's just not something that we really want to do. Now, is it? Let's talk about the modeling and the stats just a little bit. It's really tough, to be perfectly honest with you, to get a good grasp on how the Masters is going to rate out. Because more than likely one of the top 25 players in the world is going to win at the Masters. So you can start making some cross-offs when it comes down to things like that. I talked about the form guide of everything coming in. You can look at their recent form. You can look at their past form, making cuts, that kind of thing. And listen, there's real stuff here. The last 9 green jacket winners boast a name first and last that are actually, I guess Hideki may have blown this out of the water last year. Yeah, Hideki Matsuyama became the first winner since Charles Schwartzel with more than 13 combined letters in their first or last name. So that's pretty good. And 6 of the past 10 champions have had a name of 11 or 12 letters in their name. So, I mean, that's most definitely something you can think about. I'm kidding, of course, with all this stuff. But those are like some of the stupid trends that you're going to see all week. And I'm not going to be immune to putting out some of them because I think they're fun to look at. They make for a fun read, a fun digging in terms of research. And I'll have tons of research inside the newsletter articles every single day of the tournament. And looking at it right now, I have off the tee weighted at 20%, approach weighted at 30%, par 5s 5%, and I also have eagles gained at 5% at the very bottom too. So that kind of goes hand in hand with the par 5s. That also brings approach into play and putting into play too. We can look at par 4s. That's at 10%, driving distance 10%, par 4s 450 to 500 yards, the most difficult holes on the course 5%, proximity 175 to 200, and strokes gained short game at 10%, which is a combination of around the green and putting. We'll load that in, past 50, and let it tell us that Jon Rahm is not only the best player in the world, but he should be the favorite to win this. That's my guess. I have not ran this as of right now, but we're going to go find out if it is old Johnny Rahm at the top. Of course it is. Rahm, Thomas, Rory, Cantlay, Big Dick, Vic, Hovland. Luke List, number 6. Ooh, that's what happens when you don't wait putting too much. Scheffler, although the match play win isn't technically included in this because it has no strokes gained data from it, it does have 2 of his wins. He's number 7, Morikawa, Xander, and Dustin Johnson. Totally spaced on how Morikawa finished last year. I always thought this would not be a great course for Morikawa, but the way that he's rolled it on bent grass greens over time, you really worry about the chipping with Morikawa. I actually vastly improved last year, came T18. And you can see the numbers for him are kind of all over the map. Was not great at the Players, but at the Century, the Genesis, and Valspar. And hell, he made it out of the group stage at match play. He hadn't lost a hole. He was not trailing in any of his 3 matches in the group stage, and then got absolutely pounded by Abraham Answer in the next round. I mean, you have one bad round. It's going to happen. Or the other guy, Answer was making like 25-foot putts all over the place, and Morikawa was missing 5-footers. That would be the issue, but Zalatoris just came in second here too. I'm not going to downgrade Morikawa at all just because I see the numbers that I want to see from him. The irons have not been spiking to the extent that they normally would be, that you would hope, because usually he's up around like 8. But we talked about Tiger. He gained 1.5 off the tee, just over 9 at approach, and putted okay that week. It wasn't amazing. Tiger Woods on the greens. Very good lag putting that week. That's a really important thing that stats can't really quantify, I find at least, is who are the good lag putters on the PGA Tour. Like, Will Zalatoris is a good lag putter. Bubba Watson is a really good lag putter. Tiger Woods is an immaculate lag putter. Some guys just aren't. Then they leave themselves 9 feet on the next putt and they miss it. Those guys don't. They leave themselves inside that 5-foot window and then they make their putts. Not so much Will Zalatoris because he loves missing 5-footers. But these fast bent grass greens, these pure bent grass greens, pretty good. So who are the worst players outside of let's see, the worst? Patrick Reed is 86 in this field. He actually trails Larry Mize, who I think's only stats come from the mat. I wonder how far back Larry Mize's 50 rounds actually go to. Let's see, 2003, the Buick Invitational for Larry Mize is how far his numbers go back. Kisner, 80th in this field overall. Zach Johnson, very low. And all these guys are going to be like viable options at the Open Championship at St. Andrews later on this year. But not so much at this course with these conditions. Molinari has been bad. Willett's been bad. Bobby Mack, I am playing Bobby Mack. Let's throw him on the list. He came 12th here last year. He's played really well in major championships over the course of his young career. Big, hitting lefty at the Masters. Sign me up for that. Siwoo, he's going on the list. Siwoo actually has a really good track record at the Masters. We know that he broke his putter. I believe that was last year, so that didn't really turn out too well for him. But as you can see, 12th, 34th, 21st, 24th. So each of the past 4 years, he's been good. $7,100 on DraftKings, and you know, it might just come out of nowhere and he finds that hot flat stick. So other guys like Higo and Glover and even Nas down there. Nas had some pretty good run at the Masters over the years, so I think he's can be taken on a different case, and he played pretty well at the match play to grind it out a lot. But that's what he's going to do. He's going to get it up and down. He's going to make his putts. Fourth in strokes gained, short game. Overall, I think that's something really to look at. You see Tiger, K.H. Lee. So these guys are kind of in the middle. Thomas Pieters is someone that I'll likely be targeting as well. He doesn't have a long Masters track record, but he wasn't a Millionaire Maker winning a lineup at one point in time. He came fourth, and he's missed a cut in his career. So that 2017 year was the year that Mike Leone came second at the Millionaire Maker, won himself a cool $150K. Shout out to our guy. 2 hats, 1 Mike. And then you have almost anyone from like this range down. These 40 down are probably where you want to look. You could probably extend it to 45. I doubt Harris English is going to end up playing. He might try to gut it out, but he's been off for so long now with this injury. I would not expect him to come back in. So overall, over that time, we mentioned the guys that went through. Let's go with past 24 rounds to see if that tells us a little bit of a different story on some of the other players. It was funny not to see Henley inside the top 10 of a stat model for the first time in ages. Let's see if that changes when I sort this time around. No, still no Russell Henley. I guess it's the specific stats that I'm looking at. He only rates out 17th, and he's 5th in par 5s, 3rd in approach, 1st in eagles. But he's just not great off the tee, and that's going to come back to bite him here. That's why you see he has those good finishes, but no great finishes at Augusta National. I do think that it was either him or Webb Simpson. They just started like chipping in from the middle of the fairway in the final round in one of those years as well. I think Webb or Henley became the first player to make back-to-back eagles at number 8 and number 9 in Masters history. It was neither 7 or 8 or 8 and 9. I think it was 8 and 9 because they just kept chipping in from everywhere. And like not from like just off the green side, like the middle of the fairway from 130 yards away. So obviously, we know he's good with his iron, so that works out well. So in updated past 24 rounds, Thomas, List, Rahm, Scheffler, Hovland. List is really interesting because he's obviously played this course a bunch, just not in competitive settings. But his short game, one of the better around the green players on tour right now. One of the worst putters in the history of golf. Can he figure out these greens? It hasn't been a problem with Connors at all. So, and even Connor's putting. So there's something with these super fast greens. Maybe that's what we can look at here and see if we can really search that out. Super fast greens over time. Even bent grass, super fast greens. Let's just go fast. Fast and lightning in terms of strokes gained putting and see if we can find any information off that. Because these are most likely going to play with lightning style greens. See, lightning, and then we don't have any more information because Augusta hates doing it. Frankly, we should probably just use lightning, not even fast, because these are going to be so much faster than than anyone would really be expecting. So we'll just look at lightning greens, and maybe you can put in fast if you want to as well. So these are your best putters of the past 50 rounds on lightning greens. There's Kisner for you. There's Xander Schauffele. So Zach Johnson, Mackenzie Hughes, Kevin Kisner, Xander Schauffele, Jason Kokrak, the Gucci Man, Bryson and Fitz, Bezadenhout. See a lot of South Africans kind of populating this part of the list. Louis Oosthuizen, Cam Smith. Fred Couples is on this list still. Patrick Reed, Billy Horschel, Seamus Power. If we extend that or shrink that size down to the past 24 rounds, obviously, this isn't counting the Masters because we don't have the strokes gained data from that. Cam Smith, Dustin Johnson, Zach Johnson, Xander Fitzpatrick. Now, you have 2 Masters winners in there, 2 guys who have come second in one of the past 2 years, and a guy who has not missed a cut in ages. Louis, another guy who's come in second. Rose, another guy who's come in second. Webb with those top 20 finishes across the board. So in these shorter samples, maybe Mac Hughes will show up. Maybe Kokrak or Lucas Herbert will end up there as well. But you still have Sung Jae, Hatton, Bryson, Bezadenhout, Adam Scott. I've already bet on Adam Scott to win the Masters at 66-1. You better believe I'll be playing him at $8,300. And for all the talk of what a crap putter Adam Scott is, he has figured that out for whatever reason. You can see over his past 5 tournaments, averaging 2.8 strokes per over the past 10, 1.8 over the past 20, 2.2. It's a lot of green. In the putting column for old Adam Scott, those irons are looking good. Inconsistent, but still looking pretty good overall. The putting is looking good. The chipping, it can be here or there, but he has a ton of experience. Obviously, he has won at Augusta before. And the driving, if we can get one of these weeks out of him, it's the plus 2.7, the plus 2.6, or even what we saw at the match play when he made a little bit of a run. Not the minus 1.5 and the minus 3. He is definitely live to win this tournament just based on how much better his putter has been over the course of, the past 18 months or so. Like, it's a diametric flip from what he was starting basically like right here in 2018. He was like the worst putter on tour. You can see all that red on the screen. And then just all of a sudden, it's a lot of green screens for old Adam Scott and like lofty amounts of putting. 4.1, 5.7, 6.5, 7.2. So let's not overlook old Adam Scott when it comes down to this. So I think that gives us a pretty good idea of what we want to look at in terms of the types of players, top 25 players we want to go with, the particular types of skill sets, maybe some cross-off type of players we can look at too. So on par fours, JT is going to be up there. Long par fours, you got Cam Young. Cam Young's going to be a popular sleeper. We'll see, let ownership really guide that out when we talk about it with Tambo and Raza, and then we re-up with it next Wednesday when we break down the final ownership percentages on DraftKings. I think that can help out a little bit more when we try to decipher ownership. I would expect Cam Young to be popular at $7,000. I think it really has to do with who are the other guys in that range who are going to soak up a lot of ownership, and I think Kisner is most definitely going to be a very popular play, $6,800. I could see Harmon being a popular play at the same time. List, I mean, it'll depend on how he finishes at Valero, but if he comes like top 5 at Valero, he's going to be like 25% owned. And then all of a sudden, Cameron Young is like 7% owned. Oh my God, Si Woo's right there. 4% Si Woo, 7,100. Woo! I love it. Let's go get that. And Bobby Mack. So yeah, I love Luke List, but I would have no problem fading him for those other 3 guys directly around him. I don't love Woodland, but we'll see how he ends up doing. But Woodland's another one. If he has a really good Valero at $6,900, he's going to be super popular in everyone's DraftKings lineups. And that's not to say that they're not going to play well just because they're popular. But if we're trying to navigate a field to win $1 million on DraftKings, you can play in the Pat Mayo experience one that you're not playing against 800,000 people. You're only playing against like 5,500 people, and there's no rake, and it's only $15 to play, $5,000 to first place. Hit the description of this video or pod, and you are going to be good to go on that. But that's just how the ownership is just going to end up shaking itself. And I wonder if anyone actually, I'm recording this so early, let's just click on a few names here just so we can get up to our 6 minimum that we need to go look at ownership percentages and see if anyone's generated a lineup so far. Yes, there's been almost 800 generated lineups to this point. Very few people are using Scheffler. I'll break down the ownership more on the shows coming up. Thomas, very popular. Rahm, very popular. Cam Smith, popular. Xander, popular. Brooks, Zalatoris, Shane Lowry, Scott and Neiman, both huge percentages, as is Henley, Connors, Leishman. What else do we got here? Homa and McIntyre, both with a ton of ownership. There's Harmon, like I talked about. Kisner, no one is playing Kisner from Fantasy National, but I guarantee you that's not going to be the case when it comes to the general overall public. Luke List, only 8% right now. Cam Young, only 7.5%. Westwood, Molinari, 1 and 2%. Any other higher end guys down here? No one's really going that much below. Thomas Peters at 11%, but as you can see, the lineups generated versus the actual calculated ownership at this point is still going to be incredibly low because the general population doesn't know who Thomas Peters is, but he's $6,600. He won in Europe earlier this year. Like, that's not going to move the needle for a lot of players. So we're going to have more as the week goes along. But if you want to subscribe to Fantasy National, become a member, utilize all of these tools, which I just kind of flash in front of your face, do your own research, generate your own lineups, use the simulator, put on any customizations that you want. FantasyNational.com/Mayo will get you 20% off. And that'll do it on the Pat Mayo Experience 2022 Masters Research. Once again, FantasyNational.com/Mayo to get yourself 20% off. Play in the giant major season, one and done over at FantasyGolfChampionships.com. $100 to play, $10,000 to first place. You can find all of this information down in the description. Play in the Listeners League. Rate and review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Leave your Twitter handle and email address to get both into the draw for free giveaways, free entries into the one and done, and all that handsome Masters gear I showed you at the beginning of the show. So the description's where you can find most all the information, and sub to the newsletter, again, in the description. Every single day starting Sunday, Masters research, updates, all the news, all the weather, all the ownership will be there for you, completely free, sent directly to you, and like close-ups and sizes of all the Masters gear as well. So thank you all for watching. Smash the like on the way out, and I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience. Experience.